As y'all know, whenever we talk about politics and finances, I like to share some stories. So the latest with the Mazzei family, as I was telling our friend Jeff Dunn, is this is the year I have 4 kids in college out of the 5, because the youngest one, Jackson, just went off to Baylor University. Now we're particularly excited that he got a spot on the running team, but these Division I runner athletes, they don't get the big full-blown scholarships that the football players get and the basketball players get. So it's still kind of expensive. And of course, we went down with him when he moved in a few months back in August. And these athletes are kind of spoiled. He's got an apartment with his own room and a living area. So we're buying all this stuff at Walmart, and then we got to go to Target because they've got their own kitchen. And the money's just going out. A few days later, I get the first text from Jackson after moving him in, and it's, "Hey, can I get Invisalign?" And I text back, "What's Invisalign?" And well, it's for the teeth. And well, how much does it cost? Silence. I don't hear anything about it anymore. But then a few days later, I'm talking to Noelle. "Did you understand the text from Jackson about the teeth stuff?" And she said, "Yeah, he called me and asked if we would do that, but he told me it was $2,000. And I told him, I don't think Dad's going to want to spend a couple $1,000s on Invisalign. And keep in mind, we spent thousands on his mouth, for braces and all that stuff. And his response to Noelle was, "Oh, Mom, Dad's loaded. Don't worry about it." And I'm thinking, oh, he's going off to business school at Baylor. That's great, but he's a little spoiled. So several weeks ago, I let his bank account get down to $3 so he could live life as a poor college student for a while and see what it was really like. I caved after a few days, but still I enjoyed the moment. And as you know, being in the entrepreneurial world, as I think about him going to the Hanamaker School, I probably didn't say that right, Jeff, but the Hanamaker School of Business at Baylor is exciting for me because my entrepreneurial efforts enabled us to not only build a small business, but also participate in public service. And the goal of our public service over the last 12 or 16 years basically has been centered on a lot of the issues and action items that were important to you. So I accepted the call to go back down to the Capitol for a couple of years on Governor Stitt's cabinet. And I really thought you all would like to see a little bit of a update on what many of the ideas and action items we had talked about had turned into some successful actions. So within that context, what we want to talk about today is 3 things, some of the turnaround recommendations that were worked on by many of you during the Stitt transition, key accomplishments that came into place, and then our response to COVID-19. And the fuel behind all of that has been our focus to pursue more jobs and higher incomes, get our schools more help and produce better education outcomes, and of course, increase access to healthcare with more doctors and nurses. And the first thing to dive into is the working group on government efficiency. I hope Earl Sears is around. I couldn't quite tell if he joined us or not, John, but Earl Sears was our chairman of the working group on government efficiency. And there was quite a lot of research and effort that went into the turnaround recommendations on these 5 issues. And I'm pleased to say that all or many of the items for issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 all got addressed, but nothing much happened on issue number 5, and we'll cover that in a second. But some of the key highlights were a complete revamp of the governor's executive budget, which in the past had basically been a political document that nobody paid attention to. And we built in there an executive summary with long-term vision, financial conditions, pension issues, and the cost of tax credits, so it would become a reliable financial resource document. And for the first time in Oklahoma history, we had a spending plan and financial recommendations that were consistent with the overall financial structure of the state. And many of the working group items landed square in that governor's executive budget. And this new template was repeated in 2021. And the budget that just came out still had the template that we adopted. So again, it's a much more reliable financial document for people to look to and get important data from. One of the other key items of focus was teaching everyone that 12 agencies really make up 91% of the state's overall appropriations. And one of the excellent parts of participating in the cabinet was the work that I did with Chief Operating Officer John Budd and the Secretary of Digital Transformation, David Ostro. We each had an office side by side down in the dungeon of the Capitol, and we worked closely on trying to fix things as we ran into different issues. For example, the Department of Public Safety has tremendous folks that are committed to law enforcement, but they're not real good at technology and finances and operations. So John Budd, the COO of the state, had to do some important work to bring in a new director who's Commissioner John Scully. He's been trying to change a lot of things effectively. Technology was just a real disaster. The whole Real ID driver's license program hadn't gotten off the ground, so David Ostro dug into that and pulled it out of the fire. So we actually have a Real ID system that's in compliance with the federal government. And I ended up working with the finance team a lot because they just were sometimes a constant mess of dealing with the cash flow. For example, just a few months ago, the commissioner called me up, who I really like, and said, hey, could you help us kind of figure out a few cash flow things? We need to find another way to have another trooper academy, but we're struggling with what's happened with the recent budget cut. And I said, sure. So I got my team together and he had his team together, and a picture, we're all in a Zoom conversation like this. And he goes through this impressive PowerPoint presentation of what needs to happen for them to get stable. And I'm starting to scratch my head and get a headache and go, something is terribly wrong here. And finally, I grabbed some numbers, and the $95 million appropriation plan that the legislature had set up for the Department of Public Safety, all of a sudden with this stabilizing the finances for DPS, the commissioner was laying out a budget of $107 million. And I said, Commissioner, where did you get this $12 million from? And he looks at his finance person. Well, where did these numbers come from? And this particular person at the time said, well, that's what we got from all the troop commanders at all the divisions in terms of what they need and want. And I'm going, you can't base a budget on what everybody wants. We don't live in nirvana. We live in the real world. There's some things we can do, but this just isn't even a starting point. So I had to ask everybody to leave. The commissioner and I had a frank conversation. Again, he's really good to work with, and he allowed my team in the budget office to basically tell his team in their, what we call the budget work program, to teach them how to redo things. And it took a few weeks, but we finally got it settled. And that's kind of a theme that I try to emphasize in conversations with folks, that, conservative Republicans, successful entrepreneurs that we try to support, we get in there and we fix things. Conservatives are the ones who make economies better and fix programs and address core services so the people of our community can chase their goals and dreams. It's not like the liberal Democrats who want to just spread money on anything that moves, whether it's needed or not. And that was kind of our goal the last couple of years in terms of trying to operate in a professional, best of class manner. And so as we look at key wins and accomplishments, these are three that came straight out of the working group on government efficiency. Get 5 of the top 12 agencies under executive authority: Department of Transportation, Department of Corrections, Office of Juvenile Affairs, Healthcare Authority, Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. And the governor did an excellent job getting real sharp professionals in each of those agencies. One of my favorite to work with has been Secretary of Transportation Tim Gatz. He and I worked on some legislation last year that drew down some very, very cheap federal money a little bit sooner than planned. So the project at I-44 and US 75 could get launched a few years ahead of schedule. Now that's going to be real irritating for all of us for about 3 years, but when it's done, it's going to be pretty nice that it finally got addressed. We also implemented some performance and financial audits. I wasn't involved in the Information Services Technology project at the Office of Management and Enterprise Services. But in regards to the Healthcare Authority and the Medicaid audit, I helped lift that one off the ground and monitor it as the auditor's office was working on it for about a year. And Masood, what you'll find interesting is that the report that the auditor came out with basically indicated that a little over 30% of Medicaid participants in the state of Oklahoma, and keep in mind there's 1 billion of them, 1 million of them, 30-some% of them have never had their income verified to see if they're actually eligible or not. And at a minimum, they looked at one particular population group and found that $29 million, and this is just the floor, everyone, $29 million was definitely going to ineligible participants. Hopefully the Healthcare Authority going forward is in the process of fixing that up, and I know they're taking it seriously. One of the unusual challenges you wouldn't think would be all that difficult was what we were doing at the health department to get back $30 million. They begged for money. After they seemed to have run out of money, it became a real public issue that was very disconcerting. 200 people almost, lost their jobs. The legislature gave them $30 million. When we got down there, I was being told by staff in the Senate and staff in the House and even some folks in the executive branch, well, we know you'd like to get that 30 million back, but because of all their financial messes, some of it's already been spent. You can't get it back. I said, that doesn't make any sense. So I had to get a whole bunch of people in a room and go through all the accounting and look at all the cash balances and walk through everything. And sure enough, we found the $30 million, and it was easy to get everyone on board to pull it back once we could prove it was out there. Some other important key wins were the set aside that you heard about of $200 million, which we really ended up needing it last year. We got the savings account of the state up to $1 billion. We used 800 million of it last year. I don't know if Professor Bud Turman's out there, but Bud, we did save money for a rainy day, and little did we know that the rainy day was going to be a global pandemic. There's some extra money in this cycle if you want to ask about it during the Q&A, and hopefully they they replenished the reserve account in a significant manner. Of course, we got teacher pay up to tops in the region. Some states have gotten busy since we've done that, so we've actually slipped to number 3 recently, but increased spending in, should I move this? It's getting in the way of people seeing the entire screen. Education spending got up to $3 billion. And that's important, and we need to keep putting more and more resources in education. Unfortunately, this big lift in spending did not come with education reform. I know some of the legislators that I've talked to are real serious about seeing that through. We had a plan to have Senator Newhouse and Senator Rader and Representative Dills, my local state representative, and Representative Hilbert,
David Rader's on the call,
make some cameo appearances. I think David Rader is on the call in spite of the intense work they've got going on down at the Capitol to catch up on some these snow days. And one of the reforms he's been real committed to is getting the Oklahoma Scholarship Fund up to a higher level so more low-income students can get a very high-quality education. That program has been extremely successful, but it's pretty limited at this point, and hopefully he gets to push forward on that reform effort. It's stuck again. There it is. We also got some money into the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund. Our deposit a couple years ago was more than the fund had received in its entire lifetime. And Mike Mazzei pays attention to the lifetime of the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund, because we all might want to remember that the program itself was run by legislation presented by Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Mike Mazzei. So this is one of my babies that I like paying attention to because I authored it in the state Senate, and it has resulted in some important aerospace and retail jobs. I know some of you will find this shocking, but when I got down there, it became apparent that most state agencies did not track expenses versus actual budget. I was the first Secretary of Finance person, if you will, to meet with all 65 appropriated agencies and the top 15 or so of the non-appropriated agencies, and only a handful were actually doing proper financial quarterly reports. So we did a big seminar with all the chief financial officers. We had monthly phone calls to institute this process of best practices. And I really hope that discipline continues going forward. One of the more challenging programs was the new Veterans Affairs Health Center. Give a shout out to Dow Hughes if he's got to be on the call today. He was my partner down at the Capitol on this. And you wouldn't think bringing such an important project to conclusion that would have 1,300 jobs in Tulsa be somewhat controversial and difficult, because it had all these different moving parts from Tulsa and the federal government and the state. But this was just a nightmare. I've been through a fair share of pressure and suffering in my life. And this is the one that almost tipped me over the edge. And I was about to just chuck it and leave the Capitol, because I'd put my figure into one hole because the Senate was mad about something. And then I'd have to do the same thing for the House because they were mad about something. And then I'd report back to the governor and he was mad about something. And this just went on and on and on for 9 months. But finally we got it done. And the end result is the Kerr Edmondson building is, which is right across the street from the OSU Medical Center, has now been transferred to the OSU Board of Regents, which is giving the facility to the federal government, and $120 million is coming our way from the latest federal budget to turn that facility into a new hospital that's going to be great for the corridor downtown and much better for veterans in terms of access to healthcare. So it was a very worthwhile project, even though it had me shaking my head some days. And we do have, this set of items that were in the working group on government efficiency document that didn't get addressed. So there's more work that needs to be done. Many of the top 12 agencies never got a performance audit. My friend, Representative Kyle Hilbert, was brave enough to push through a reduction in the cost of one of the special interest tax deals out there. And unfortunately, it got vetoed. We had some agency consolidation with the Office of Emergency Management and the Department of Homeland Security, but our big recommendation and an independent consultant's big recommendation to merge the Healthcare Authority with mental health and substance abuse hasn't happened yet. And we haven't gotten any of these elected positions to actual appointed positions, which would bring more accountability and transparency. Some of this stuff, seems like no-brainers, and we would able to sort of punch through the opposition. And, I call it dinosaur land down there. It's just hard to get stuff done. It generally sometimes leaves you with some frustration. Dilbert seemed to give the best scenario for what it's like to be working at a Capitol on a daily basis. As usual, I worked until midnight last night, Mom. Well, at least you made some extra money. I don't get paid for overtime. Well, son, at least it was important work. Not really, Mom. My boss made me change my PowerPoint slides, but the changes make them worse. Well, at least you're prepared for your meeting. The meeting was canceled. Well, that's okay because the project isn't funded anyway. So you worked for free. I felt like I was working for free. To worsen a presentation for a meeting that won't happen for a project that doesn't exist. Yep. Oh, you must work for the government. That's kind of spot on some days, but little did I know our biggest challenge was ahead. And obviously, we've all had huge, amazing challenges with COVID-19. And in the state's case, back in March, we got a deposit of $1.2 billion from the federal government to get out the door for relief funds and stimulus funds for the people of Oklahoma. And we had a deadline of December 30th. If you've seen the movie Brewster's Millions, all of a sudden I felt like Brewster. We had all this money and we had to get it out the door. There's a little controversy out there. Some of the legislators don't quite like the fact that this was left to the executive branch to handle. You may see some stuff here and there in the news. I'm going to have to focus on the wise words of Abraham Lincoln. Truth is generally the best vindication against slander, because the work of our Cares Forward team was really monumental in getting money out to 400 cities and counties, helping 8,600 businesses, keeping over 19,000 people in their homes, $50 million going to testing and tracing, and I could go on and on and on, but this was definitely one of the most impactful projects I've worked on in my 16 years of being involved. It's like starting a brand new company from scratch and running with it. My part-time public service job went to 70 hours a week. But fortunately, we did a lot to help thousands and thousands and thousands of Oklahoma people. So I did kind of want to let you know that we plan to stay engaged and always keep working towards our vision of more jobs and higher incomes for our workers in Oklahoma, ways to make our schools better and improve education outcomes for the kids, have better access to healthcare for longer and healthier lives with more doctors and more nurses. I continue to believe that Oklahoma is a land of promise and opportunity with our best days ahead. We certainly need to move away from some of this combative, fighting with each other to a more collaborative approach of everyone working on priority issues, white, Black, Native American, Hispanics, Asians. There's so much we can all do together to make Oklahoma a great place for our kids and grandkids to live and work. And I just wanted to say a thank you to all of you for supporting me and my efforts. It was always easy to kind of try to do what I was right, knowing that I had all this, support back home. Many of you are aware of my long health journey that was, quite complicated and difficult. As for 10 years, I was basically disabled from catastrophic nerve damage from an accident, and generally had to live life on a couch or a training table here in the office. We finally found some nerve regeneration specialists that helped me get back on a better track. It took 3 years, and I had 50 procedures and 5,000 injections. And my business partner, David Moore, and my dad, James Mazzei, can confirm it was 5,000 injections over time that helped my nerves calm down enough to start the rehab process with my friend and coach. We call him Coach Jeff Ravenscroft. He might be on the line. And little by little, I got stronger and stronger and better and better. And lo and behold, a couple weeks ago, I'm grateful to my Lord Almighty in heaven. I hiked up to a 3,000-foot level at one of the mountains, desert mountains surrounding Scottsdale. So I just wanted to share that with you. I know some of you are struggling with the whole COVID stuff. The hits keep coming. We lose electricity. We have a shocking winter storm. You've probably got loved ones or family members that are going through stuff related to COVID or financial issues. You may have your own health issues that you're balancing out or trying to deal with. And I just want to let you know that there are better days ahead, even when it feels like things aren't progressing. Please remember that if Mazzei can kind of get through some of this stuff, certainly you can as well. If you ever need someone to commiserate with, I hope you call me because we can share probably pretty interesting stories. But good days are ahead. Please remember the Mazzei motto, keep moving forward. And I think with that, we just will let you know that soon to be announced is our new website where we're going to get some of our commentary and sessions like this out and about. If you know folks that would like to have us speak on my personal story or finances, we hope you'll let us know and hook us up. And with that, we're gonna turn it over to get into your questions.